All right, let's get right into it. When you hear words like financial regulations, I get it. Your eyes might start to glaze over. It all sounds so complex, maybe a little dry. But what if I told you that hidden inside all that legal jargon is basically a superpower, a set of rights that belong to you? Today, we're going to unpack the laws that act as your personal shield in the financial world. I mean, think about it for a second. You fill out that application for a car loan or a mortgage. You hit submit, and then what? Your most sensitive information just disappears into this financial black box. Who's looking at it? How are they judging you? It's a process that can literally change your life. But for most of us, it's a total mystery. And it really can feel like you have no control. But here's the thing. You actually have way more power than you think. There's a whole set of federal laws designed for one reason, to protect you, to give you a voice and a sense of control. Think of it as your financial Bill of Rights. So let's start with the first and maybe the most important pillar, your right to accuracy. This is all about one simple idea. The information that companies use to make big decisions about you has to be correct. Because, if the data is wrong, the decision will almost certainly be wrong. The absolute cornerstone of this right is a law called the Fair Credit Reporting Act, or you'll hear it called the FCRA. This thing was passed all the way back in 1970. Its job is to regulate how your credit history is collected, who gets to see it, and what they're allowed to do with it. It is, for all intents and purposes, the official rulebook for the entire credit reporting industry. Okay, so who are these companies that are collecting all this info? Well, the law calls them Consumer Reporting Agencies, or CRAs. And this isn't some random, obscure agency. We're talking about the big three you've definitely heard of: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Their entire business model is built around gathering up your financial data and packaging it into a report. And here's where it gets really, really interesting. What exactly is in a consumer report? You probably think, okay, it's my credit card payments, my loans, but the definition in the FCRA is incredibly broad. I mean, look at this. It can include information about your character, general reputation, even your mode of living. We're talking about things like rental history, public records, things you might not even think of as financial. It paints a surprisingly detailed picture of who you are. So that leads to the most important question of all, right? With all of this data floating around, what happens when they mess up? What if there's a mistake on your report that's keeping you from getting a loan or even an apartment? This is where the FCRA gives you some real teeth. It lays out a step-by-step process that you can follow to dispute errors. So here's how it works. First, you spot the mistake on your report. Then you tell the reporting agency about it. And at that moment, the responsibility shifts to them. They have to launch a reinvestigation. They have to go back to the company that supplied the info in the first place. And if that company can't prove the information is accurate, the agency is legally required to either fix it or delete it completely. This isn't a polite suggestion, it's the law. Okay, moving on to our second pillar. It's one thing to make sure the data is accurate. That's huge. But what about how that data is used? That brings us to your right to fairness. This is all about making sure you aren't being discriminated against. And a huge law in this area is the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act, or HMDA. The best way to think about HMDA is like a giant watchdog for the mortgage industry. Its main job is to shine a bright light on lending practices to see if banks are actually serving their whole communities or if they're unfairly shutting certain people out. And how does it do that? Well, by collecting a ton of data. Lenders have to report anonymized info about everyone who applies for a mortgage, including sensitive stuff like their race and ethnicity. This lets regulators, and the public, by the way, look for patterns. It helps them spot potential discrimination, like the illegal practice of redlining, where lenders would avoid providing services to people in certain neighborhoods based on their race. And this isn't just about catching bad guys. This quote from the government shows how the data has a bigger purpose. It helps everyone understand what's happening in the housing market as a whole, like whether enough money is being loaned out to build things like apartment buildings, which are absolutely crucial for housing in so many areas. So we have accurate data, and it's being used fairly. But what about the loan agreement itself? Do you actually have a clue what you're signing? Well, that brings us to our third and final pillar, your right to clarity. This right is all thanks to a law called the Truth in Lending Act, or TILA. And honestly, its name says it all. The whole point is to make sure you get a clear, easy-to-understand breakdown of the loan terms before you're locked in. It standardizes everything so you can actually compare different offers side by side, like apples to apples. I mean, this slide says it all. Before TILA, you could get a contract just loaded with confusing jargon, hidden fees. It was impossible to really know what you were getting into. TILA completely changed the game. It introduced standard forms, it forces lenders to give you a clear breakdown of costs, and it created one of the most important numbers in all of finance, the annual percentage rate, or APR.
And TILA gives you real, tangible tools to use. With a mortgage, for example, you get a loan estimate form right at the beginning and a closing disclosure form a few days before you sign, so you have time to review everything without pressure. And for certain loans, TILA gives you this incredibly powerful 3-day right to cancel, basically a cooling off period, where you can back out of the deal, no questions asked.
So now that we've walked through these 3 pillars, what's the big takeaway? It's actually pretty simple. Knowledge is power. When you understand these laws, you stop being just a passive applicant, and you become an empowered consumer who knows their rights. Accuracy, fairness, and clarity. Remember those 3 words. They are the foundation of your protection, upheld by the FCRA, HMDA, and TILA. They make sure the story told about you is true, that it's used without bias, and that any deal you're offered is crystal clear. So why does all this matter in the real world? It means you have a legal right to see your credit data and a process to fix it if it's wrong. It means there's a system in place trying to make sure all communities get a fair shot at housing. It means you can't be legally rushed into a huge financial decision without clear information. And for the companies that break these rules, there are very real, very serious consequences. And that brings us right here to the final question I'll leave you with. This isn't just interesting information, it's a tool. Now that you know you have these rights, how is that going to change how you handle your finances? Are you going to check your credit report more carefully? Will you read those loan documents with a little more confidence? Because the power, by law, is already in your hands.